I'm making the marble or the swirly rye from the recipe, using the recipe from I'm using the recipe that I found on Sourdough Home. I'm just real quick, I measured everything out last night except for the cocoa and the molasses. And the cocoa, it needs 11 grams. And the reason I didn't do this last night was because it's so light. It could have made a huge mess in the kitchen. Okay, there's the 11 grams. This is for color, for the dark rye. So there's that. And the molasses, we need 18 grams. Something about the smell of molasses. They do smell, it does smell good. Well, the scale didn't like me. It went over, so I'll have to take a few grams out. Probably wouldn't hurt to leave it in, but I'll still do it the way the recipe. Oh, well, it went off on me. Still gonna try to take only a couple grams out of this. Okay, that's about where we need to be. I did measure these all, including the flour, because everything's by weight. Oh, I need to do my starter. I need to add to it first the last feeding. So I do need to weigh that. Just so you can see, there's the starter. And this is just my opinion, but it always reminds me of a female killdeer. Her feathers, the way they look, that's what the happy sourdough reminds me of when I before I stir it in the mornings. Okay, there's the 72 grams of flour. Now I'm going to do and do 72 grams of water and then stir this up. Oh, 74. Because I went over on the water, I'm just going to add a little more flour rather than try to get the water out. It actually is closer to 3, but I'll be real careful, try to get that in. Okay, there is 3. I'm just going to turn that off. I'm going to stir this up and then we'll get started making bread. I've got to separate this into 2 for starters. I've also got going back here, I've got just some regular sourdough bread. I don't remember, I got this recipe from the site where I originally got the sourdough, and I cannot remember the name of the lady who had the site, but that's the recipe I'm using for that one. That's the one I do all the time. I actually made this a few days ago. I did 2 small loaves rather than a large loaf, and this recipe that I'm making today is actually almost 3 times as big, although it's in 2 loaves instead, or 2 batches instead of 1. Well, there's my start. I just fed it. It's happy. Okay, well, he didn't read this right. It says feed the starter 5 hours before using it, so we're not gonna do this quite yet. I'll wait the 5 hours. I'll put everything back on the counter, the other counter. I will weigh it out into the separate bowls so that it'll be ready in that regard to go into, to start using it. That's floating between 144 and 145 grams. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to worry about a portion of a gram being over. I have noticed, though, that if you're not careful when it does that measuring to feed, that you can get too watery of a start. As you can see here, I've got bottles. These are the flour. Oh, on the light rye it calls for caraway, and I like the flavor. I just don't like the seeds, so I ground them and I put the salt in with it, and then to clear the grinder I put a little bit of the rye berry. There's the rye flour that I ground. This is for the light. I also did this is the bread flour for one, this is the bread flour for the other, this is the water for one, this is the water for the other. Of course, the molasses, the cocoa, and the salt for the dark that I didn't get done last night, or that this was done, these weren't, but I'll get back to these in a while. I didn't read the wait 5 hours, which is logical, so it's 10:40 now. I'll wait till about 3:30 or so to do the bread. Just somewhat of a footnote. I actually prefer to bake in the afternoon rather than in the morning. I like to prep in the morning. And I actually started the other bread, which is a 2-day. You start it the night before and then you do it the day that you bake it. You add the rest of the flour and water and oil and the salt, and then you let it rise. Then you put it in a pan, let it rise again, and then bake it. That one will probably be baked after these. I'm not sure. Well, no, these will probably be baked. I don't know. We'll have to see. Wait and see how it comes out. But I've separated, because this one already has the salt and the caraway in it. These are for the light rye. They'd actually use a little more water. Over here is for the dark rye. Uses 30 grams less water than the light rye, according to the recipe from Sourdough Home's website. I will get back to that in a few hours, well, about 5 hours, and we'll get this done. I may have to move a few things around because Mom's does have a few dishes, and I can get them done before I do this. I may not, so we'll see how it goes. I put the starters up on a cooling rack with a towel over them because in Mom's, with the stone, it doesn't keep the temperature very well. It stays too cold. It does keep the temperature very well, and it keeps the temperature of the air in the room, which at the moment is about 72 degrees, where the sourdough likes it a little warmer. By putting it up on the rack, that'll help. Mom's going to help me do this later. We were just talking about that extra molasses, and she spent some time in the South. I did too, but she spent it with, I worked there, basically lived in a hotel, and Mom actually was working as a nanny. But she said that when she was there, they used the molasses for more things, and she said she's going to have the extra molasses that I got over when I was pouring this with a little bit of peanut butter on toast for lunch. So that's cool. Not going to waste that. And I've got it separated. I said that we will get back to this about 4 hours, 4.5 hours from now, 4 hours and 40 minutes from now, I should say. It should be ready to start doing something. And I'm going to have to read the recipe more, because after we make it, I don't know, he said he bakes it 5 hours after he feeds the starter. So I'll have to read the recipe again. But we will get back to it. Just something I forgot. I found a recipe for The recipe was called Real German Pumpernickel, and the only thing in it is a rye start, water, rye flour, rye berries, and crushed rye. And it calls for cane sugar syrup, although the girl who made it is in Edinburgh, where I found the recipe is in Edinburgh, and she said that she used maple syrup. I don't like maple syrup. I could use it, I'm sure, but it's still fairly expensive. But the thing that I understand is that cane sugar syrup didn't come from Germany, and when they first started making pumpernickel bread, which is a slow baked bread, they probably used honey, and that's what I'm going to attempt to use, but I haven't started the starter yet. That'll be something probably next week. I do have the rye berries to do that, and I've started doing some cracked rye berries, not very many. I think I've only got about 80 grams is all, but I'm going to do this first. This one actually to me seems easy in comparison to the other one, because the rye berries, the rye one, it says 3 days, and you bake it for 12 to 16 hours at 225 or something. But I need to do the start still, and the start takes 4 or 5 days, and it's going to be a runny start. It's only going to be 50% hydration, because it's 25 grams of rye berries and 50 grams of water for 4 or 5 feedings, days, whatever. By the way, my start does have rye in it. It has spelt in it. It has kamut in it. I actually ground a 10 or 12 grain cereal mix that someone had given Mom, and put that in when I was originally starting my start. So my start has a lot of various different flours in it for flavor. Typically when I get it out of the fridge and feed it, I just use all-purpose flour. Although I could probably use rye flour to feed the ones in the fridge for a while, because I've got plenty of it. I've ground plenty of it. But that's just something that's coming up next. We'll get to the bread in a few hours. Well, 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Mom has this sauerkraut, and it's really good put in the drippings from a roast. So I actually did this roast last night. I put it in the crock pot just to get the flavor. I'm going to take it out now, and then I'm going to put the sauerkraut in the liquid that's off the roast. I don't know, probably not all of it. Just a note, I've been wanting to make sauerkraut for a long time, and just don't have a crock. But Mom has another crock pot just like this. She's got a little bit slightly taller crock, and she said that I could use that, and we'll weight it with a bowl and, I don't know, rocks or something. We'll clean some rocks or something. But I'm going to just put this sauerkraut in here for flavor. Can you give me the scissors, please? Mom's actually helping me. Since we're playing in her kitchen, it's kind of to be expected, I guess. She said, when I said I was going to put this in here, she said, all of it? Kind of whispered it in the background, and no, we're not going to use all of it, but we are going to use about half. I think this is a 2-pound bag, and we'll put about 1 pound of it in here, and it'll pick up wonderful flavor. Oh, I need to open that further. Being in the juice from that pork roast.
And we prefer less than the can.
And Mom says she prefers the bagged to the can, and I actually do too. It's not processed with heat, so it is better. However, it's packaged in plastic, so you know, it's just a give and take.
Choose your poison.
the plastic flavor does come out in the sauerkraut. Although you put it in something else and it leaves. It's only there if you eat it directly out of there. I'm just going to stir this up. There was some fat in with the roast. I left it in with the juice. This is going to taste wonderful, and we may have to do all of it, Mom, because it's real soupy.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to do all of this.
We both love the sauerkraut, just plain.
Mom and I will just take a bowl of this, and that, just because all the flavors there, it's a meal, or at least for us. But yeah, she's got another crock pot. Like I said, it's the same size as this. It's just a little bit deeper. And I was going to see about making some sauerkraut. I'll have to find my instructions again because it's been a while since I did them. So I think it's just shred it, salt it, weight it, and call it good. Let it sit. She says that her grandmother, my great-grandmother, used to have a huge crock in the dining room that she had a plate and that she weighted with a rock, but it had a platter for a plate. But it's the German ancestry in the family who did that. I'm going to put this back over on the heat on just a low setting and let it cook. I'll get back to the sauerkraut when I actually make some, because I definitely do want to make some. I actually talked to a gentleman at the local grocery store, and his wife is Asian. I can't remember what nationality he said, I just know Asian, and that she did kimchi. I think Japanese, but I'm not positive, although kimchi I've understood to be Korean. But I'm going to try making sauerkraut, so that's something I'm planning to do in the future. Today is going to be a long day. Mom and I are in the kitchen. We haven't done this in a long time, so we're spending some time. We picked up these refried beans at a case lot, and we didn't realize when we did that they're fat-free, and seriously, they're almost inedible without any fat. This is just some drippings, and I'm just going to mix them in and do this to reheat these. Mom's making bean and cheese burritos for lunch, but it's just amazing the difference it makes adding just a teaspoon, not even a teaspoon of drippings for the flavor. Fat-free is fine on all. If you want to do it, that's your option, but fat is where the flavor comes from, and the fat is where the satisfaction comes from, and you'll never be satisfied just eating these unless you're just saying, okay, I've eaten, I'm not going to eat anymore. You won't be satisfied though, unless your brain is blackmailing your body into thinking that it's full. It is full. It's just you're not satisfied. You don't get the satisfaction, which makes you want to eat more. It just doesn't work. I'm just going to warm these in the microwave. It actually takes less power than doing the stove, so I'm going to do that. And we're just going to spend the day cooking. So off and on throughout the day, Mom and I are going to play in the kitchen. Mom's stirring the beans in the microwave, get the heat evenly distributed. But she was just telling me how big the crock was that was at her grandma's, and I'm going to have her describe the size of it again. It was a really big crock. When she turns around, I'll have her show the dimensions that she just showed me. I'll do this. I'll set the time on that while she shows in front of the camera. Just stand right there. Well, no.
Spoon was about this big around.
No, just gonna show width. The camera's down, so just show width. No, just right there.
About this big around.
There's about a yard around.
And probably 3 feet tall.
And she said it's about this tall. So it's probably almost the size of a 55-gallon drum. There's probably a 50-gallon crock. Mom's making bean and cheese burritos. She's getting a little bit heavy on the beans, but that's her prerogative. And we've determined that for the same price, it's cheaper to buy the cheese already shredded than to shred it yourself.
Well, I can't see what I'm doing, so it's better.
Well, even before that, it was better to do that. But we're going to put together a couple of these with the microwave going. We're just spending time in the kitchen, having fun. I've got the 5-hour wait. I'm going to put these breads together. I'm going to start with the light rye. Actually, I'm going to put that cover back over that one for now. Okay, starter, 144 grams. Water, 206 grams. Oh, the butter. That's something I need to get out of the way that I hadn't, because it's supposed to be firm. The butter, it says 18 grams or 1 tablespoon and a teaspoon. I'm going to use a knife and try to do this right after I let Bella out. I've cut the butter, and that's what I did. I'm just going to try and see if this is close to the 18 grams. Hey, look at that, 18 grams, perfect. Okay, supposed to cut this in small pieces, so I'm going to get it out, use the plate. I knew that, I just forgot, and so I'll cut that and we'll get back to it in just a bit. I actually know that with doughs, using a hard shortening or oil works better for some reason with making even biscuits. Just any of your doughs work better with a hard or a solid fat, whether it be drippings or butter or whatever. Okay, it's just saying to put everything in and mix it together, and it recommends using a mixer. Don't have a stand mixer, so I guess I'll use Mom's mixer. And then it says to let it rest for 20 minutes. I'm gonna start mixing this, I guess. I'm gonna start with a spoon and then I'll go to the mixer, just because it'll work better by doing that. And then I'll go to the dark rye. Mom's got some cooking going on the other side of the kitchen. She's actually got the mixer out for me, but she's got some stuff going, so there is not just my noise, but hers as well. She's doing a casserole. I think she's doing Mexican lasagna, which is a wonderful, wonderful dish. It would be really nice to have a mixer, and they're nice because they have, you can get attachments for them for your grain mill and all that. I had a Bosch Universal, and I loved it. I just had to sell it because I needed money. But I'm going to get this done, and I'm probably going to have to knead it a little bit because this hand mixer won't probably do the job. But I think it says knead for 5 minutes, rest for 5 minutes, knead for another 5 minutes. That's where the mixer would come in real handy if you had a KitchenAid or the Bosch or whatever the case may be. I'm going to let the dog back in, get this mixed for 5 minutes, then rested, and then mixed again, and then I've got to start on that dark. Well, I needed the light for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to start with the dark. I'm going to cut up the butter. I just weighed it. I have the right amount. Like I said, I don't have a mixer, so I did need that, and I tried to do it more like how a mixer would do it, turning, not a fold and turn, but more of a, just trying to mix it without really and it's all I can do because I don't have the mixer, but that's what is going to happen. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to do this one now. I've got everything measured out. Start with the water. I have the cocoa and the molasses here, and I'm going to wait on that. Here's half of the bread flour. I didn't have another quart jar that I could find handy last night while I was getting these prepped ahead. And here's the rye. See how little rye there is compared to the bread flour? This is basically a flour bread, but it does have the rye in it. And the smell, the flavor should be wonderful. It's just not rye, 100% rye bread, which is about what you get when you go to a restaurant. Probably is you end up with a wheat bread that has rye, or if you buy a marbled rye. Okay, here's the molasses, which is the last I'm putting in. This is, I'm going to mix with a spoon, and then I'll do it by hand after I get it mostly mixed with the spoon. I do like the smell of molasses. They add a distinct flavor, but I don't think it will be as strong as the flavor of the rye. Just, it does have a distinct flavor. Mom's over there to the side, and so you hear her on the one side. I'm over here, but I'm gonna mix this up, or try to mix this, and then I'll start kneading it. That's where that the dark comes from, is that cocoa and the molasses. Okay, there's the timer. It's time to knead the white again. Mom's going to do this one, she said, for me. She's got to wash her hands, and then she's going to do that, and then we're going to, I guess I'll start this one while she's doing that one.
Don't want it to taste like green chilies.
Nope, don't want it to taste like green chilies. Here is the timer. Whenever you're ready, I'll start it. You're ready? Okay, we'll start it. Well, I'm going to work on this one while she works on that one, and we'll get back to it. And I are just playing today. This is the Mexican lasagna. This is the meat sauce that goes into it, and it's layered with cheese, cottage cheese with egg, and
Ricotta.
Or ricotta. That's actually there, and you use the flour tortillas.
No.
Or
Corn tortillas.
excuse me, corn tortillas instead of flour, instead of the noodles. I mean.
And it's got Mexican flavors instead of Italian.
And it, like Mom just said, you probably didn't hear it because she's not loud enough behind me. It's got Mexican flavors instead of Italian. And this is the sauerkraut that I put in with the drippings from that roast that we're going to make into something else. And I don't know what I did with the lid for my water. Mom used it probably. But we're just playing. I've got to put the butter on a butter dish because I actually cut it from both ends because I used that as my gauge. And I actually measured perfectly because I got 18 grams when I did both measures. So that worked out wonderfully. We're going to, still waiting. Here's the dark rye with the molasses and cocoa. That's the light. It's got its 20-minute rest. This is on its rest between kneadings of 5 minutes each. They will go long. I'll start with that and then I'll do this, but I've got to get a pan ready, all kinds of stuff. But we're playing in the kitchen and we'll get back to it. Well, I've got the rye done. Just did free-form rolls. I didn't put it in a pan. We'll see how it looks. I'm sure the middles will be really pretty. The ends will be not as swirled. This is the other bread I was working on. I'm going to do this into 2 small loaves. I've got to find another pan because I usually use one of the quarter sheets. But I'm going to break this into 2 loaves real quick and do that. These will probably be ready not too long, a couple hours. Mom's got a air bake cookie sheet, so I'm going to use that. But I'm going to get these made into 2 loaves first, and then I'll get it covered and be waiting on it, as well as the rye. Mom's got the Mexican lasagna in here. This recipe actually was from Albertsons. It was one of their quick fixing ideas or something. And she doctored it a little bit, but there's that. The bread should raise within the next couple of hours. This is the sauerkraut. I ought to probably start the rye starter for the pumpernickel, but I need to read that recipe through. Obviously, I didn't read this recipe enough to know on the rye, the swarthy rye from the recipe from Sourdough Home. Mom's traded me places. She's now washing dishes and I'm not. But we'll get back to the baking as the bread rises and get back to it and see how it all comes out. This is the Mexican lasagna that Mom made. It needs to set for about 10 minutes after you pull it out of the oven. It solidifies a little bit and doesn't fall apart when you cut it. I moved the sourdough bread over here on top of the stove. The oven is off, but it's still warm. And here's the 2 rye. And I'm just going to let them raise. Probably going to have about 2 hours before we get ready to bake those. They have to rise. The kitchen is at the moment hot, really hot. Mom will do dinner first, and then we'll do these later. But it's getting there. Mom finished off the dishes while I was drying some for her. But there is a couple minutes to 5, and I figure it'll be about 2 hours. There's Grandma, or Grandma's work. Grandma was a very, very talented person, amazingly talented. That's actually on a board, by the way. But there's
an art board.
Yeah, an art board, but a board. Not a canvas. But that's the time, 5 o'clock, without reflection, hopefully. And we're going to get back to this as it raises. Just doing the cleanup for the moment. I'm going to take this off, put this back on. That's 2. I think that's let off enough moisture on the sauerkraut. And we'll get back to it. Well, I'm getting ready to do the bread. I'm doing the sourdough first. I actually flattened one of them, but I'm going to do it anyway. The rye needs a little bit more. I'm going to move it over on top, on a rack on top of the oven, see if that helps. But there we go. Timer. Oh, cancel. Timer 3000. Start. Just needed, I think, a little more heat, and I'll put it on those cooling racks here. The rye. I think those are looking really good. Mom says it hasn't risen much, but I say it has, but Mom can't see very well either. I'm going to wait for those, after this is done. I have to raise the temperature. I think it's 375 to 400 for this. So I'll raise it probably to 400 to do these, just because, I don't know, I like the idea of the higher heat. And then we'll get back to this as the timer goes. Well, I've just heated the oven to 400. I'm going to put these rye loaves in. It says 40 to 45 minutes. I'm going to do 40. And we'll get back to that when the timer goes off. These are the rye. This is the light rye on the outside. I'm gonna put this over here. I'm gonna take it off, but I'm gonna leave it over there for now. Without it, this is the dark rye on the outside. I need to take these off the pan. Turn off the oven. That's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
This one you can really see the color because it pulled away there. I didn't have the wrap all the way to the bottom, but it does look really good, both of them. On the recipe it says send us pictures. I'm not really good for logging into my email, so if anybody out there wants to send a link to this bread to Mike at Sourdough Home, that would be great. I'd love them to see it. Mom says I've got to do this. She's been doing this all my life. This is easier than an egg wash. This is just a butter wrap that she saved, and this is, we're just making a shine on the loaves. Oh, that's too hot. You can do it.
Okay.
Just shining up the loaves a little bit. I'm taking the pans outside while she's doing that. This one needs a little more on this side. These aren't really done. Yeah, we're done making them, but they're not really done because they need to cool, and then we'll have to put them in bags. They definitely grew more than I expected, and I guess it has to do with how good your start is. My start, I think, was, well, in my opinion, my start was in great shape based on how these came out. Those, oh, I gotta find a ruler. Yardstick, hold on. These have to have grown at least double. I'm going to put this between the, okay, 2 3/4 is the height of the cooling rack. I'm going to move this one out of the way so I can turn the other one. 2 3/4 is the height of the cooling rack, and we're looking at 6 1/2, 7 overall. Oh, it's actually 2 1/2 is the height of the cooling rack, 2 5/8. Oh no, hold on. Let's get it all the way on. Still 6 1/2 inches on the bread minus 2 3/4. It raised really well considering it was probably only about there before I did it. I'm gonna let them cool. I'll get them in bags. But that's the bread day. We are still working. Mom had some chicken wings that she boiled. We're gonna debone them and skin them and take the meat. She's going to make something out of that, and I think I'm done baking for the weekend. I'll have to get this edited tomorrow. It's going to be a day doing that. I had fun today. Mom and I both enjoyed today doing the bread. This is the sourdough that I did, but these are just, this was a recipe for a single loaf. I just made it into 2 loaves. And then that's the rye there. You can see the difference in, well, you can see the difference in the height of those loaves. It's amazing how different they do look. But like I said, we had fun. We're still having a little bit, but I'm done doing video. And like I said, tomorrow I'll probably spend all day editing video. I don't think this will end up as one video. It'll probably be multiples. Might take me 2 or 3 days to get it done. I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. And you know, hey, we had a fun time today. I did these rye breads freeform, and I think next time I'll do them in a pan. They rose more than I expected. They actually, I thought they'd be really light, and because of that. But so far, this is the first one. I've just done a few slices, but it's definitely still a dense bread. I'm going to continue cutting this and then cut the other one. I promised some to some friends. The bread came out looking wonderful. So I'm excited.
Thanks for watching Perhaps Cooking. Feel free to share, give me a thumbs up, or subscribe.